You hear the wind outside, you smell cedar burning, you're kneeling on packed earth, clutching a bundle of hide, and your body is fighting through waves of pain that feel like they'll split you in two. You're about to give birth. But this isn't a hospital. There are no IVs, no monitors, no numbing meds, just your body, your breath, and the midwife beside you, humming softly. This is what birth looked like in 1400s North America. There's no screaming down sterile halls, no fluorescent lights, no doctor in a lab coat, only a fire, a blanket of stars above, and the ancient knowledge of the women who came before you. In many indigenous communities, birth wasn't feared. It wasn't hidden. It was respected, a transformation, a spiritual passage from one world into another. Girls were taught about birth from a young age, not in hushed whispers, but with stories, lessons, ceremony. By the time labor came, you knew what was happening. Your aunties had shown you. The midwives had prepared herbs, warmed water, and maybe even sung the same birth songs your mother heard when she brought you into the world. You squatted, kneeling, letting gravity assist. Hands gripped thick cloth or birthing poles. You pushed, with the strength of generations in your lungs. Some women gave birth in lodges, some by rivers, some under the open sky, believing that life should begin where the earth and spirit meet. There were no machines to tell you what to do, no clock on the wall, only instinct and rhythm and presence. And when the baby came, the cord was cut with sharpened obsidian, tied with sinew or grass. The infant cleaned with warm water and moss, then wrapped in furs, held close, sung to. The mother would rest near the fire, nourished with herbs and cornmeal porridge, while the midwives watched, noting every breath, every sign of strength or struggle. It was hard, sometimes dangerous, but it was also beautiful, sacred, uninterrupted by wires, screens, or strangers. Birth was not a medical event. It was a ceremony, a community act, a moment where the veil between life and death grew thin, and women stood in that space and delivered life. And this wasn't just once in a while. This happened every day, in every village, across every region. So how did they survive? How did they raise children, store food, stay clean, build homes, all without the things we take for granted? Let's step deeper into that world, into the real, raw, daily life of Indigenous America in the 1400s. Let's be real. Everyone wants to know, how did they go to the bathroom? No toilets, no stalls, no occupied signs. So how'd they handle it? The answer? Smart, clean, and low-key better than some medieval towns in Europe. In most indigenous communities, people relieved themselves far from living areas and always downstream from their water source. No oops moments, no polluted rivers, just basic environmental respect. Some villages even had designated latrine zones, and people were taught from childhood where and how to go. Wiping? We talked about moss and corn cobs, but don't sleep on snow in the north. Cold, clean, effective. In warmer areas, they used soft leaves, bark, or smooth stones, and they didn't just throw it around. Waste was often buried, keeping the land and the community safe. Compare that to 1400s Europe, where folks tossed chamber pots out the window and streets reeked of human waste. Yeah, native folks were out here living cleaner. Even menstrual waste was handled with care, often burned or buried, with rituals to honor the cycle, not shame it. And the kicker? Because they used all natural materials, everything returned to the earth. No plumbing, no plastic, no landfill, just smart, sustainable living. That still makes sense today. Now let's talk about something that still makes some folks uncomfortable: periods. But for Indigenous women in the 1400s, it wasn't taboo. It was natural, respected, even sacred. Most tribes didn't treat menstruation as dirty. In fact, it was a time of rest and reflection. Some communities built moon lodges, separate spaces where women would go during their cycle, not as exile, but as a time for women to gather, rest, and recharge. Inside, women shared stories, taught younger girls what was happening, passed on herbal knowledge. It was a rite of passage, not something to hide. As for hygiene, they had that handled too. They used soft moss, cattail fluff, shredded bark, or woven plant fibers, all absorbent and biodegradable. These materials were cleaned, dried, and reused or burned afterward. Some women crafted belt-like wraps or buckskin holders to keep everything in place. And remember, no pads, no tampons. But they had solutions that didn't pollute, didn't cost money, and kept them connected to the earth. Modern period products still haven't caught up in sustainability. And beyond the physical, some believed menstruation heightened spiritual sensitivity. It was a time for dreams, visions, and stepping back from communal work. It wasn't just about blood. It was about power, cycle, life. So how did people eat? With no store, no fridge, and no microwave. They hunted, foraged, and farmed. But But not randomly. There were strategies. Out on the plains, tribes would use buffalo jumps, stampeding entire herds off cliffs. One kill could feed the village for weeks. Meanwhile, farmers grew the three sisters: corn, beans, and squash, all planted together, all helping each other grow. Corn for structure, beans to fertilize, squash to shade the soil. Genius. And cooking? No cast iron, no gas stoves. They heated stones in fire, then dropped them into water-filled animal hide pouches to boil soups and stews. It's called stone boiling, and it worked. Members LOI, you just hunted a bison. It's 800 pounds of meat. No freezer, no ice, no fridge. What do? Indigenous people had the answer. They mastered the art of preservation. First, drying. Meat and fish were cut into thin strips, laid over wooden racks, then left in the sun or smoked over a slow-burning fire. It wasn't just tasty, it lasted weeks. But when winter hit, they needed more than jerky. Enter pemmican. They'd pound dried meat into powder, melt animal fat over it, and mix in dried berries or herbs, then press it into rawhide pouches and let it cool. Pemmican was a survival superfood, high in fat, protein, and sugar. It could last years if stored right. Explorers would later steal the recipe and live off it during long expeditions. And they didn't stop there. Some tribes lined underground storage pits with grass or bark, then filled them with corn, squash, or nuts. A natural refrigerator under the earth, kept cool, kept dry, and hidden from animals. Even berries were preserved by smashing them into fruit leather laid out on animal hides to dry. And all of this with no plastics, no electricity, just pure ingenuity. Now picture this. You wake up with the sun, wrapped in deerskin, the smell of firewood and morning cornmeal in the air. This was home in the 1400s, but not a house like we know it. Depending on where you lived, housing looked very different. Eastern woodlands, you might have lived in a longhouse, a massive structure made of bent saplings and bark, stretching 100 feet or more. Multiple families under one roof, divided by fires and family ties. Great Plains, you had the teepee, portable, aerodynamic, perfect for nomadic hunting. Buffalo hides stretched over a cone of poles, and you could break it down in minutes. Minimal, but cozy. Fire in the center, smoke out the top. Southwest, you lived in adobe dwellings, thick-walled homes made from sun-dried mud bricks, cool in summer, warm in winter. Pacific Northwest, massive cedar plank houses, carved with totems, lined with firs held entire clans. Every design fit the environment, fit the lifestyle. No wasted effort, no unnecessary build. And the roles inside those homes? Crystal clear. Women ran the household, farmed, cooked, gathered herbs, made clothes, and in many tribes, they held serious power. In Iroquois society, clan mothers chose chiefs. In some groups, property and lineage passed through the mother's line. Men hunted, fished, fought, built, taught boys the path of the bow, the drum, and the trail. Children learned by doing, watching, helping, from the moment they could walk. Elders, they didn't retire, they advised. They held the stories. They were living libraries. And survival was a team sport. Every action, from planting corn to drying salmon to teaching the stars, was part of the same song. No one lived alone, and no one lived without purpose. So yeah, giving birth in the 1400s was no joke. Neither was surviving the winters, cooking a meal, or just finding a place to go to the bathroom. But they did it. And they didn't just survive. They built thriving nations with knowledge we still haven't fully grasped. So next time you're scrolling TikTok or reaching for takeout, just remember, they did it all with no tech, no power, and no safety net. Just grit, wisdom, and the will to live. This is how Indigenous people lived in the 1400s. This has been Lost Empires Chronicles. Subscribe, share, and join us next time.